don't know that. Can I take it as a win for cannabis? Can I take it as a win?
I mean,
witness number 2. No profile picture on LinkedIn.
he's a sailor.
Managing partner of Pavilion Group and just a sailor at large.
Okay,
I mean, why not?
let's drop the mic on this whole thing because these were the 2 witnesses. That's the whole government case. These are the guys.
These are the guys. Yeah. These are the guys. So,
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related, brought to you by the good people at 5E. And it's always available at jugdealers.net and jugdealers.shop.
so you can very easily find all the different things that we've got going on. And as always, big shout out to our good friend Josh D at the Real OG Kush Story. Take a look at everything that he's doing over there. If you don't believe that we've got high grade products or even commercially grade products, that's great proof of that. And also anybody that's out there, obviously you guys know that we do samples through the website, but also for anybody that's looking for commercial samples, if you're working in a facility, if you're running a facility, we are very willing to take care of you guys and put commercial grade and commercial level samples in your hands. So please do not hesitate to reach out. Anyway, we have a really good episode for you guys today. As promised, we said we're going to continue to follow up on all these hearings that's going on in the DEA. Of course, a month ago, these hearings started. A couple weeks ago, some conclusions happened. Very, very interesting, Gabe. It's tough to even know where to start, which best place to start, obviously, is kind of a recap on what happened the last time around. And then where did we get now? Arguably, did we get anywhere? But that's.
I mean, look, we're looking at 5-6 weeks ago. We had our original episode.
Right.
We're a couple weeks behind now because the trials ended. I think they were around the 14th, 15th.
July 15th. Yep.
But, we ended we did our episode a couple weeks ago, and these guys basically, they had just started. They were just sitting down in a room in Arlington. The DEA stood up in front of a judge, argued that marijuana shouldn't come out of Schedule 1. And, this is the same agency that spent 50 years calling this plant as dangerous as heroin, Schedule 1.
Dangerous as opioids, as dangerous as fentanyl, as dangerous as all the bad stuff.
And here they're bringing, a scientist and a pain doctor on the stand that says, we're a proponent of this rule and we support it, And meanwhile, across the aisle were 7 organizations, everyone opposed to rescheduling. So
right. Well, and here's the thing that kind of blows me away a little bit, right? So we get all this build up to it and all this, and honestly, we were excited at this point. You wonder, is it just a bait and switch? Is just something that's kind of pacifying us? But, we're talking 15 days, 8 parties, 1 judge, no closing arguments, no live stream, literally 1 reporter there to take notes on what was going on. So it also looks at it like, how are we even getting a non-biased reporting on it? How it's like, if nobody was in the room and nobody can verify what happened besides essentially 1 person who will identify here in a little bit, it all just seems a little weird to me, Gabe. Like, this is like, was this even, what was the point? Was this for anything?
Reality is no operators, no patients, no reform groups, not 1 voice in the room speaking for the industry. And straight up, that's because the DEA didn't even invite one, No. So where... you're talking about the people like me, and regardless of how you feel about the big MSOs, they weren't even in the room. So the strangest part is that the DEA's own pharmacologist that got dragged in under subpoena to testify against the DEA's own position, and the government declined to cross-examine, just like you were just saying.
Yeah, and and even this one
reason.
Right. And obviously we'll get into a little bit of the 280E tax thing, which honestly at this point seems to be the least of the worries. It almost seemed to be the bright like piece in the whole deal. Now it's kind of like, it stayed so complicated. And the fact that you don't even have 1, 2, you've got 1, 3. Right. And so this gap in 2, which actually creates a very weird gap because it allows for, or it acknowledges for more, for actually some level of medical use, but it doesn't acknowledge it so far to the point where you can actually do much with it, right? Mm-hmm. And you definitely don't have any of the tax breaks either. So it's like, I don't know, man. I just, it's very, very, very interesting. But let me, just to give everybody a very, very clear idea what was going on, right? So here's a short version. I'm going to read this off, right? So on April 22nd, acting AG Todd Blanche moved 2 categories of marijuana into Schedule 3 by order. This is not by hearing. This was by executive order, right? Or I guess not technically executive order, but by order. So those 2 things were FDA approved marijuana drug products. So anything, your MIPS type stuff. So edibles, any of that kind of stuff, right? Marijuana infused products, I guess, if you will. And that was actually, and that was anybody qualifying under state medical license. And that was effective immediately, but everything else stayed the same, Schedule 1. That's where the conundrum really started. Everything else being adult use, which, as you know, Gabe, that's everything in Michigan, right? So there's not even, Michigan has no Schedule 3. So there's a Schedule 3 under the federal system, but not in Michigan, right?
Yeah, and there's some medical and there's caregiver, but it's not, no.
Right. So what do we do here? I mean, as far as carrying forward, and that's where, I mean, it doesn't sound like they knew or no, doesn't sound like they've really changed anything. And at this point, I don't really have any clear idea of where the heck this is going. I mean, bottom line, like we said, Schedule 3 medical, state Schedule 3, they do have the tax benefits. Schedule 1, nothing changed whatsoever, right?
Yep. Rec is still as illegal as it was
Same plan, different schedule, decided by which paperwork you hold. This does not seem okay, right?
Nope. That's pretty much it.
The bottom line is, why didn't they just use a hearing and take everything to Schedule 3, or could they? I guess this is one of the things I'm a little bit unclear on. By the way, we're disclaimer. We're not lawyers.
We're not lawyers. We are not lawyers.
We are just a couple of curious guys who are involved in the middle of this, right?
Look, we're doing our best to just bring people the facts to a dinner that we weren't invited to, and not only were we not invited to, there was really only one person in the room that we even knew, and we don't even know the guy. We just reporting.
And I guess let's get down to who's actually, let's talk about who was actually in the room, because obviously we weren't in the room. We weren't invited in the room. Very few people were invited in the room. And essentially it was the DEA, and we'll get to the 2 people that they put on the stand. But in reality, it was just 7 opponents against the DEA. That's it. No victim advocacy groups.
Yeah, no stenographers.
No, nothing. Yeah, I mean, there was not even an official record. There was no live stream. There was nothing.
Yeah, nothing was allowed to be recorded. There was no visual recordings. We were getting our updates from Gene Traders. I can't remember. I can't pull up on my phone right now, but Gene Traders, basically this dude went down there, and the whole thing was, as I saw, I believe it was standing room only. So
25 seats is what they're saying, supposedly. Nobody talks.
Not only did you need to get down there, but you needed to get down there early enough that you got one of those seats.
Right.
So again, doesn't really, to me, it doesn't seem like they wanted us to have a seat at the table.
No.
Who am I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it was on the up and up.
Well, here's the thing. It all just seemed like a real bait and switch to me, quite frankly. And now I'm still struggling with why waste the time? Why do all this? What's the horse and pony show for? You know what I mean? What's the smoke and mirrors for? But I mean, and maybe we'll never find out. We're definitely not going to, let me promise you this. We're not going to find that out on this episode, but we're going to try and at least break it apart a little bit. Let's talk about the designated parties that were actually there. So the government, right? They were on June 29th. NDASA was on July 2nd. SAM, and you guys can look up all this stuff as far as the actual groups there. July 6th. DUID, which is basically mad for driving under the influence of drugs. July 7th. Kenneth Finn, who was an MD, July 8th. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, I don't know what that's about. July 10th. Phil and Drenler, Farm D, July 13th. The states of Nebraska, Idaho, Indiana, and Louisiana. And the only reason I can think that they would be there is because they have been directly bordering legal states for quite some time and are in high opposition of it.
I mean, who set the list? So DEA Administrator Terrence Cole invited only reform opponents, telling supporters they don't meet the interested person definition because they aren't adversely affected or aggrieved. When I put up the quotation marks, that's the direct
quote. Absolutely.
Used by the rule. So read that. Only prohibition is qualified by construction. The industry is helped by rules. So the industry has no standing to be in the room.
So we're an interested party at the way they've made the definition. We don't qualify. This is
because we built it on doing things illegally.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's funny because I like the fact that they maybe use the word the prohibitionist, because we are pre-prohibitionists. The whole thing is people like us stand out because we were doing it before it was truly in this medical realm. But they're putting us all in the same basket.
This is very interesting, even the way that they've written this.
Which is funny because when I look back on it, I see kids who have been in it since 2010, and I'm like, well, you never really had to do it illegally. But as far as the government's concerned, they're like, well, all you guys have been doing it illegally. So
and then by claiming that as the prohibitionists, and I do feel like it's funny that they call us that, as the prohibitionists, we're helped by the rule, therefore we don't qualify to be in the room.
Yeah,
like this is some real rigmarole shit right here. I'll tell you what, and the fact that the DA is the proponent and carries the burden of proof, right? So the agency that fought this for 5 decades is the only voice defending it. Doesn't that seem problematic? Like literally, listen to that again. There's 7 opponents and 1 proponent. The 1 proponent is a DEA who has said no for over 50. Does this not seem flawed? Right off the bat, you go, well, I'm sitting here thinking that there's no question that that's not going to work out. So they've actually stacked the deck on the other side, tried to act like they're playing nice, but in reality, we see exactly what's going on.
So recap, they're the only proponent and they only invited reform opponents. Okay.
Yes. No, yeah. Well, let's just make sure we're clear.
Government, like at its finest. Doesn't matter if you voted for the donkey or the elephant. You're getting the mule.
Yeah, you're definitely getting the mule. And then here's our one concession, right? They allowed the Cannabis Business Times, which I'm not sure who's even behind that, and I can't tell you that I've ever read it or even seen it, but the Cannabis Business Times was the lone outlet in the room for the government's entire direct testimony from its first witness. That's it. And then it looks like the New York Times, Jan Hoffman only appeared for a Monday afternoon cross-examination. One outlet for the whole direct case. That's the record that we actually have right now. But I just, again, sorry if I seem a little bit stunned, especially as we move into the next segment and we see that in theory, truly, the DEA was acting like they're arguing, and I do say acting like they were arguing for cannabis.
And the Cannabis Business Times, that's not a premier organization. Not sure how they got the tip.
We're not bashing. We are friends with everyone, but hey. So anyway, let's talk about the DEA argument for weed. So Monday, 29th of June, the attorney out of the DEA's diversion section, whose whole job is stopping drugs from leaking into the wrong hands. We talk, everybody talks about diversion and metric, all the rest of that. Stands up. He says the government is here as a proponent of the proposed rule and it supports it. Kevin Sabat actually went outside and filmed the video, calling it surreal when Sabat is the guy telling you the world flipped upside down. You're having an unusual Monday. I'm
definitely having an unusual big word, but it's like I see what's coming out of their mouth, but I just can't come up with it. I mean, it supposedly, at least according to our records, the hearing was really only about one thing, specifically whether marijuana has a currently accepted medical use, right? Which is a CAMU, currently acceptable medical use. A substance cannot stay in Schedule 1 if it has even one acceptable medical use, just one, even one. Hey everybody, I did not want to interrupt the show. However, we need you to help us by taking your grow to the next level.
Go right on over to jugdealers.shop and pick up some Slicium. Don't let bugs or a failed AC or a broken pump take your grow down. Get Slicium at jugdealers.shop. It is readily water soluble and uptaken immediately to thicken cell walls and reduce any and all abiotic and biotic stresses. Keep in mind, this is how we support the show. We are never sponsored. We are funded by you taking your grow to the next level. So to support us and your grow, head on over to jugdealers.shop and get yourself something real nice. Now back to the show.
One, if it has even one acceptable medical use, just one, even one, how is that not findable, right? So obviously, certain things like driving and some of the things with psychiatry and teen brains and, diversion programs and stuff, that was kind of pushed to the side and said, let's not talk about that. That's off the table. It literally is only one thing, even though it seems like that's hold on, though. But that's the opponents that they brought in, Gabe. They brought in the opponents that were exactly these things that they say are supposed to be off the table. Driving, DUID, driving under the influence of drugs. I'm sorry, I didn't come up with that title. Obviously we're trying to get things changed to facts, but that's a whole other thing.
As we go through it, you look at some of those Tennessee testimonies, they were, they're saying there's all kinds of deaths because of people driving on cannabis and this, that, and the other. And
but that's not even supposed to be on the table. That's not, that literally is not supposed, that was not what the question is. And I don't know much about law. Again, a reminder, we're not lawyers, but law is very specific in its wording and it's, the attempt is to be very black and white, no gray area, right? Well, I see a lot of gray area. I see a lot of just ridiculousness, to be honest with you. So the people that, it doesn't have a medical acceptable use. Okay, cool. Let's talk about driving on it. What does that have to do with it? That's not about, an accepted medical use, right? So
the two have nothing to do with each other.
Well, and here's the other thing too. From what I understand, part of the issue here that we're working with is some of this framework, right? So this is something that did seem to actually have at least make a little bit more sense as far as some of the old testing that was in place and what they're testing for, and is it even in that regard? Is it ever going to be accepted? As a botanical, let's say, I don't want to say cure, but something can actually help with any sort of ailments. Again, an accepted medical use, right? And it seems like the way, it's built around one synthesizable molecule, so a plant can never satisfy it. So it's like the way the rules are even written, it can't even happen. So it's like we're a step ahead, and we really should be already rewriting the rules, not necessarily rewriting the scheduling currently.
Well, yeah, the FDA uses basically a two-part framework,
Right.
And the kill shot from them is the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel ruled in 2024, the 5-part test is impermissibly narrow and validated on 2-part 1, that opinion binds the agencies.
That's what I'm looking at. Looking at DA and the FDA, like they can't. It's that part hasn't bound up. So
if insert tab A means slot B, so it's like once one rules one way, the other has to rule the other way. They don't have to,
that's right, exactly. Yep. All right, well, let's talk about, did the DEA bring in witnesses that were even worth the shit? Well, the first one is Dr. Dominic Chipperino, something along that. He led the review behind Schedule 3 recommendation. So certified admissible medical use found for 3 conditions: anorexia tied to the medical condition, chemo-induced nausea, and pain. 39 trials worth, strongest on neuropathic pain. The money slide, right? So the FDA actually benchmarked cannabis against heroin, fentanyl, oxycontin, hydrocodone, cocaine, ketamine, benzos, and alcohol. No surprises here, guys.
So wait. Okay, so just so we're keeping tally here.
Yep.
That would be a win for medical.
I don't know what's a win for what at this point, Gabe. I'm so damn confused, to be honest with you. You'd think it was a win for medical. You'd think.
Their first witness here, he has no profile picture on his LinkedIn. He's got 384 connections. I don't use LinkedIn. I have more than that. Not a lot of as I'm fact checking who's let in and who's doing stuff. It is a bunch of nobodies and weirdos.
Right. I mean, it's That is very interesting to me. He doesn't seem to have a whole lot, but at the same time, it's basically saying, it's pretty easy when you have your benchmark against all these other things and you go, well, we're not going to do any of that. Pretty obvious that we have less, basically no overdose deaths than all of them combined, right? And then there's also not the withdrawal. This is actually acknowledged. It's not the withdrawal that there is with tobacco. There isn't the alcohol withdrawal. There isn't anything like that. Withdrawals can't kill you. All that was basically acknowledged by our no-name doctor that the
Jug Dealers has sent him a friend request. So we're going to get to the bottom of this, boys.
To the bottom of this, dang it. We are getting to the bottom of this. So he did acknowledge cannabis wouldn't have passed the old 5-part test, which was already, I thought we, figured that out. And the opposition called it a win. It isn't, right? It can't be. But it's now on the record, which is a problem because everything has precedent in law, right? So now that it has somewhat on the record, it's like now we have to work off that framework. Right?
Yeah, no, 100%. So what about their second witness, Dr. Corey Birchman, a pain physician? Cannabis as an opioid sparing agent. The soundbite of the hearing: opioid withdrawal is like a dumpster fire, quote unquote. I love all the quotes in here, because
these are great quotes.
Marijuana withdrawal, a dying campfire ember. So comparing a dumpster fire to a campfire ember seems like, look, I don't know that. Can I take it as a win for cannabis? Can I take it as a win?
Witness number 2, no profile picture on LinkedIn.
He's a sailor at
managing partner of Pavilion Group and just a sailor at large.
Okay, why not? Let's drop the mic on this whole thing because these were the 2 witnesses. That's the whole government case. These are the guys.
These are the guys. Yeah. These are the guys. So they got basically 7 people, 7 prohibitionists, got 7 days to tear the entire thing down with unlimited direct witness, experts that they could call from all over the place. And we got these 2.
They could have gotten Dr. Riley in there.
Exactly. What's something with a profile picture? Just someone that exists on the internet. These guys have no digital footprint. This is hilarious.
It's almost like they didn't want to win their part of it. I'm just saying.
Well, this is crazy.
So Sam, which was one of the DEs, right? Versus they subpoenaed a bunch of knuckleheads.
Right. So Sam, which I don't know what Sam stands for, maybe you can look that up real quick, but that was one of the prohibitionist groups, right? So they actually subpoenaed one of the DEA scientists. And you know what? The government just declined to cross-examine her. Well, no need, right? She's part of it. We're good.
Look, hey, we stated our case with our 2 guys. We don't need to cross-examine anybody. Nobody. We got it. We don't need to cross-examine.
Done.
What? Corey and Dom, they nailed it.
They nailed it.
And that's the smart approach to marijuana group.
When Corey was done the first day, he just dropped the mic and he said, I'm out of here. We're done. I'll see you guys next year. Give me my 250 grand.
Well, and then the DUID, which don't get me wrong, I totally understand, where they're coming from, but their whole headline claim is that it's around, 6,000 more traffic deaths a year, if there's rescheduling, and then the government didn't even cross-examine them. Where do those numbers come from? Like that, where are you pulling that out of a hat? Completely declined to cross-examine. And I mean, I understand why they're put up there and these are real things, but it's like, that's not supposed to be off the table. We're supposed to be only arguing one thing. Is there accepted medical use or not? That's it.
So then, the rest, try and move through this quickly so we're not boring everyone. But NDASA argued rescheduling undermines employer testing. So then its own director conceded on cross that private employers can keep testing anyway. So what's actually affected is the federal DOT program, safety
truckers, pilots,
stuff like that. Realtor anyone running DOT covered drivers. We'll come back to it in segment 7. And then the TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, They argued about seizing cannabis from deregulated states. She met with, and she actually meant descheduled states. She actually talked about young people getting cannabis, about, she said something about DUIs being up, as far as accidents and stuff like that. Again, I don't know how much real hard data any of these people have on it.
They didn't even, and the thing is, they didn't even know really what Schedule 3 was. They almost thought that like Schedule 3 was straight legalization. They weren't even like that's how this thing was a complete farce. This whole thing was a joke. This is little bait and switch. Here's a little carrot, guys. Act like you think something's going to happen. I mean, this is a literal. This is a joke. This is a joke.
Yeah.
They literally have people in there testifying that don't even understand what the difference in scheduling even means. This is mind blowing. And really, funny enough, the strongest real argument was a guy actually out of Humboldt, believe it or not. And I think he probably had a little bit more of a point. He's talking about more of the potency drift, right? In other words, it's so much stronger now, right? Back in the day, it was more mild, everything else. Now people are consuming things that have very high THC levels, obviously extracts and things like that could be constituted much more as driving impaired, I think is kind of the point, which hey, out of all the arguments that have happened so far, that's the only one that seems to be even half realistic, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, I think it's time. And by the way, that was a testimony from Dr. Kenny Finn, MD.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is out of Humboldt County, sheriff out of Humboldt County. Shout out to the sheriffs in Humboldt County doing your job. Let's talk about the Schedule 2 trap because this is really the outcome that nobody's pricing in.
Yep.
But I hate to be the skunk at the garden party, but everybody's LinkedIn has been on a victory lap, and the reporters who were physically in the room described a different move. And the DEA barely objected. Skipped the cross examination on most opposition witnesses, brought 2 people and went quiet for 9 days. And 2 people, when we say 2 people, these guys were bodies. These guys were fucking bodies in the room. And here's what nobody's talking about. Julius has 3 doors, not 2. Schedule 3, Schedule 1, and Schedule 2. Everybody forgot Schedule 2, man. And that's where, and I'll be honest with you, we've been talking about it for a while in the background, but let's discuss the 3-door problem a little more in depth so everybody understands what the fuck is going on.
Well, exactly. Like, again, people think that it would be reasonable, right, to just go 2, right? Split the difference. Okay, why are we arguing over 1 or 3? Why don't we just go to 2? But the reality is, any of the benefits that are in 3 are all gone. You don't have any of the 280E stuff. You don't have any of that stuff. You don't even really have a large ability to even do some of the testing that you'd like to do or research that you'd like to do. It kind of keeps it like in a purgatory area, really. It's like, okay, now it's not Schedule 1, so that's cool, but you still can't do much with it. And it kind of just sits there in a weird zone. I don't know.
Can't grow Schedule 2 in your basement, bro.
Nope. And that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Because it falls under, and we talked about this many shows ago about how some of these things sound great, but then you realize the level of control that's given up. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, what happens if everything's a triploid and everything's seedless and we can't collect seeds and plant them anymore? You know what I mean? It's like that control. And all of a sudden, when we did that first episode on, I go, oh man, it really is descheduling, because rescheduling does nothing for us, especially in 2. That just completely goes, control. And even 3, now it's like, now the pharmacy can come in. Now Big Pharma can come in, and that's a whole other level of control and patents and everything else, right? So it's and that's why I think ultimately we've always been D and not re. But
hey guys, today's show is brought to you by JugDealers.shop. You want to grow the best cannabis possible? Head over to JugDealers.shop and get something like our Ruby Fulvic. It's going to give you more efficient uptake on your NPK. You could also try our Winter Frost to increase secondary metabolite uptake and improve your cultivar's flavor and phenotypic expression. Or finally, grab some Cocoa Blocks to save time and money. This is how you can support the show, and it keeps us going. We're never sponsored. We're 100% funded by you taking your garden to the next level. Head over to jugdealers.shop and get something to help your cultivation thrive. Now, back to the show.
I think ultimately we've always been D and not re. But what can I say? Now, here's the other thing. There are some anomalies, right? So you have some things, you do have some cannabis-derived products that are already in big pharma and already prescribable. How is that? You know what I mean? So you have, I don't know if Marinol's still out there, but that was, I think the very first one, right? Sitsuvix was one that was out there, right? The one, Pedialex is one I think that's the more modern one, right? But it's like, how are these approved and moved all the way to Schedule 5, which I didn't even know there was Schedule 5. I thought once you got to Schedule 5, you were out the door, but whatever. And that was done in 2018, right? Definitely derived from marijuana. And even in FDA-approved form, it fell within the federal definition of marijuana. But this approval predating the 2018 Farm Bill seems to be what is the loophole right now.
Yep.
So I guess they just got grandfathered in. Is that the deal?
It seems like it. Yeah, no, it's and again, it's very covert right now. It's kind of they're throwing so many different things around and trying to pull so many different levers.
Right.
To be honest with you, it seems like to keep us confused.
Gabe, I'm actually half-assed more confused now than when we even started this, and I totally agree with you. This is smoke and mirrors. It keeps me very confused because let's even go farther. So this recommendation, by the way, is still non-binding. There's still
yeah. So
the DEA could still go Schedule 3 anyway.
But then the DOJ has to argue to its own judge that it got it wrong and has to defend the HHS recording against fresh 2026 testimony in DC Circuit, a gift to Sam, and they built the problem themselves.
And that's the whole problem. So are they going to do that? Are they going to create that problem? And that's where I find it very, very hard to believe that they're actually going to go out and create that problem, right? If you see what the problem is right away and they go, oh shit, we're going to come up against the DOJ. We're just going to leave it. And nobody's talking about it, right?
Well, the reality is, if Rihanna Durrett's right and that there will not be a verdict, if Schedule 3 is truly decided at the White House level, none of this fucking matters, man. The question is whether you want to bet your CapEx on that at some point.
Well, but that's my problem. Then again, why? Why all this? Why the horse and pony show? Again, just to keep us pacified. That's all I can figure at this point. It doesn't seem like anything real is happening.
It's hard to see anything substantive coming from this. You know what I mean? Other than, I'll be honest with you, other than people being really pissed off about the outcome. And the thing that really shocks me about it is I know there's some of the big MSOs, that have paid the money to play. They've given the administration the $1 million to show up and go and have a seat at the table. And they didn't get a fucking seat at the table. So
and here's the other thing. We got a little bit of a false flag going on too, because the reality is while this hearing's going on, literally there is in the appeals court, you got 3 different people trying to completely vacate the April hearing of medical going to Schedule 3 and the 280E relief anyway. So at the same time,
we teased this last time too.
Yeah.
We teased that this was kind of happening, and as time goes on, these things are working their way through the courts.
You're right. Right. And that's where I find it all just a little bit interesting is like, this is going on at the same time, this is going on, and what even really matters, because this isn't going to matter if that gets vacated. It's just like,
it reminds me of this old scene in the movie Freak, to where the guy just goes, all opposed? All right. Vote concluded.
Well, without getting lost in the sauce completely, right? Yeah, because there's some of the stuff, but this is, let's move it on a little bit. What does this really mean for operations? Because I think ultimately, what does it mean for you, Gabe, right? Because that's
I mean, as of today, state licensed medical operators, 280 is already gone since April 22nd. So if you're a state licensed medical operator, you've been able to operate under 280 since April 22nd. Adult use, basically everybody in Michigan,
not changed.
Any states that are fully rec, nothing's changed. You're still paying 70 to 90% effective, the federal rate on money. You never get to keep. And whether that was decided or wasn't in a room, you weren't allowed
to be in. Right.
You weren't allowed to be in one room. So, we will have to sit here and hope that one day they straighten it out. So what are the mechanics? 280E applies to trafficking.
And that's why because they're illegal drugs. That's why they can't ever apply to it because it's a traffic narcotic.
You can't write off moving federally illegal substances. Ask my father. That's the whole reason medical got relief and adult didn't. If broader rescheduling lands and survives challenge, 280 falls away industry wide. But currently, you need to be a medical operator. That's where it stands. High single digit billions a year, the largest swing in cannabis economics in 40 years. You know, so and look, that's a lot of money the government gets to keep.
Yeah.
So to be fair, why the hell would they want to give that back to us? You know what I mean? I cannot disagree with that. You know, I don't know what to say about that. You know, I mean, I think looking back on it, there's a lot of us who still, again, if you've been here for 20, 30 years, you still kind of have that moniker where you're like, well, I'm fortunate that they don't come and fucking arrest me. So I guess I'll pay my taxes.
See, and that's that's not how I agree with you 100%, but that's not how it should be. You know, it's not how it should be.
I don't disagree, but
I also 100% agree with you. It's kind of like, well, I mean, they're not messing with me. So, like, you know what I mean? I'm just going to play nice. But how long does that go on? And the fact of the matter is, we still have what is completely unresolved, right? Is adult use operators with the same registration and the ability to give medical, right? And beyond that, what about the Treasury guidance? Is there anything retroactive? Because there's been some talk about that too, right? So somebody that's been operating, let's say medical only operators, right? So not operators that are operating under both, but I could see medical only operators going, okay, well, what about the last 2 years? What about the last 3 years? Is there going to be anything retroactive on that? Of course, they haven't said anything about that. And I doubt, by the way, I doubt they'll get a thing. But I totally understand where these operators are saying, hey, you know what I mean? Is there any retroactive aspect to this?
I don't disagree. You know, and let's talk about you know, this one's near and dear to my heart. But let's talk about if you're dual licensed. And again, we're not CPAs. I'm not telling you what the fuck to do. I'm just saying here's a little guidance. But if you're dual licensed, you know, a lot of houses in Michigan are clean separation of medical and adult use at the entity and activity level, defensible allocation methodology. So what that means is keep your fucking books separate. And when we say keep your books separate, means all your purchases, your nutrients, your travel, all the fucking things. You want to keep them all separated. So that is, you know, and realistically, you wanted to start doing it in April 22nd.
April 22nd.
Day it landed.
And to be clear, you know, for everybody, as we get this wrapped up, rescheduling does not legalize. It doesn't fix banking on its own. It starts to fix a couple things, maybe. It doesn't create a prescription pathway, right? It doesn't harmonize state and federal law. In fact, it makes it more complicated, unfortunately. It fixes the tax code just a bit and cracks open a potential capital door for some of these operators. But that's it. There's still so many things that are absolutely positively not figured out. And where do we go from here? Well, there were no live closing arguments. That was actually ruled out. The hearing ended 2 weeks ago. When do we find out? The reality is there's a deadline on the briefs. And after that, there's nothing else planned currently. So as of right now, it's just an open abyss. We literally have no idea where it's going. Now, as always, guys, we obviously try and keep you guys as up to date as you can. We try and keep ourselves up to date as we can. We are not legal experts, but we do try and keep up on what's going on and legal happenings within our world. Thank you guys so much. We're not in the Jug Den this time. We're actually in 3 different locations, but we're still making it happen for you guys.
This was an emergency. We had to come tell you guys. We looked behind the curtain and we didn't see a wizard.
No, there's no wizard, but no, there is no wizards. There is no wizard. Thank you guys very much. Until next time, peace.